no life in them. Okay, you put them into the earth, you sow them onto the ground. God does His job by sending down the water, and within a week or two, you see a sprout. You see life in something that was lifeless, something that was dead. God Almighty says in a similar fashion, God will bring you back to life when you die and you have become part of the earth. God has the power and the ability to resurrect you and give you life again, to take accountability from a human being. So this is an example of a parable, or an example of how God speaks about certain concepts and He explains it through parables, through examples. Then there's a lot of discussion of the people of the past. So we see, for example, in the Bible and also in the Torah, there is the example of the 7 sleepers. So God speaks about them. There was a group of Jews who came to the Prophet Muhammad and they said, "We're not sure if you're a real messenger of God. So why don't you give us some explanation of Joseph?" Who was Joseph? And in Arabic we say Yusuf. So who was Joseph? So at that time, Muhammad being an Arab away from the land where Joseph was sent, he had no idea of who Joseph was, who Prophet Yusuf was. So he said, "Look, I have no information whatsoever. If some revelation comes to me from God, I will relay it to you." So after a certain period of time, God Almighty sent a whole chapter of the Holy Qur'an, and the title of that chapter is Joseph. And God Almighty spoke about, He says in there, أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ بِمَا أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ. It's a story that is being relayed to human beings from God, and it's one of the best stories that can be found. And it's unique in the sense that the Qur'an doesn't relay a story from beginning to end in anywhere. Anywhere in the Qur'an. What it does is whatever is important to the theme or the topic, God will bring about that aspect of the story. It won't be a story from beginning to end in sequence or chronology. So, we find when it came to the Prophet Joseph, God Almighty spoke about the life of Yusuf right from beginning to end, and scholars of the Quranic sciences explained because this was a direct answer or response to the question that was posed by this group of Jews. And then when Prophet Muhammad invited them and said, "Look, I'm relaying to you what God told me about Joseph," they were mesmerized. They were wonderstruck. They were astonished that such detail about Prophet Joseph, the details that we don't even find in our own books. So this is an example of how there are stories of people of the past so that we can derive lessons from their lives, and we can take practical examples from their lives to better our own lives. Then in the context of the Holy Qur'an, there are numerous things. When we look at the Meccan verses, they're generally related to 3 topics, and that is the oneness of God, the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad, and also the life after death. But when the Prophet journeyed from Mecca to Medina, we find that there are many laws, social laws that God spoke about. You know, when people hear the word Sharia nowadays, they feel that it's something very negative. But in fact, what it basically is, it's a way to live peacefully. So when the Prophet Muhammad came to Medina, this was the first time he was exposed to Jews, to Christians, to factions and groups of people with different ideologies. And he wasn't so sure as to how to interact with them. So God sent verses that when you have people of other faiths in your community, you deal with them with humanity, with justice. And تَبَرُّوهُمْ وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ. God Almighty says in the Holy Qur'an that you deal with people of other faiths in all justice and in human terms. What you love for yourself, you love for your brother. That's what the Prophet Muhammad said. So this is an example of how social obligations and what to do, how to interact, these are all detailed out in the Holy Qur'an for a Muslim. And then there are aspects related to practical things of life. For example, marriage. For example, childhood. For example, business transactions. Okay, advancements in technology and information. And this is why when the Christians, they find themselves in the dark ages, and you can do a study on this, when they found themselves in the dark ages, then we see that the Muslim scholars, they enhanced and they advanced in technology. So all the technology that we see today, you know, many of it elements of the Islamic sciences that are found in the Holy Qur'an and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. Recently, I believe it was last year, there was an exhibition in the Ontario Science Centre called the Sultans of Science. And in there they had the practical examples of what the Muslim scholars derive from the Quranic sciences of astronomy, of mathematics, of information technology, etc., and how these things have been developed, and today we have modern technology that we use, and the advancements in science and medicine, etc. So we find that the basis of this, where is it from? It's from the Holy Qur'an. So the Qur'an is very practical, and it demonstrates very real-life examples that we can relate to as human beings and bring into our lives to live a social life, an interactive life with all people of all faiths and all backgrounds. So this is another theme or a topic in the Holy Qur'an. Now, we can continue with that, but what I wanted to also point out here at this point, or at this junction, is the Holy Qur'an's message is not a new message. Unfortunately, many people of other faiths, they fail to understand that the Qur'an is a continuation. The Qur'an is a continuation of the previous holy books. And this is why, when we look at the Torah, it's generally called the Old Testament. So this revelation was given to the Prophet Moses. Okay? I was recently at an interfaith program last Friday at a synagogue. I was invited to speak to the Jewish community. And the topic at hand was sacred texts. So the holy books, and how we recite them, and how we take meaning from them in our lives. And one point I reiterated is that many of the concepts that are found in the Holy Qur'an are also found in the Torah. And the rabbi spoke about Abraham. He spoke about how when Abraham was sick, he was ill, and there were a few guests that came forward and they wanted some help. And God sent the revelation. And God instructed Abraham to help those people despite his sickness. So when I was invited to the podium, before I even started, I said, these exact same words are in the Holy Qur'an. Why? Because the source is the same. It's coming from God. And if we have a tap of water, it's coming from the same tank of water. Whether the tap is in this room or whether the tap is in another room, the water is going to be the same. Because the source is the same. So when it comes to the Holy Qur'an, it's not a new message. It's the same message that is found in the Torah, in the Old Testament, and also in the Gospel or the Bible, because the source is the same. So this is why when we look at the holy books, we refer to the Torah as the Old Testament, we refer to the Bible as the New Testament, and we refer the Holy Qur'an as the Final Testament. So it's like, you're watching a movie, and you're so excited to see what's the outcome, what's the end of the movie. So you're there, and there's 10 minutes or 20 minutes left, and most of the time that's the best part. So what you do is you say, last 10 minutes, last 20 minutes, I don't want to watch it. And I'm satisfied with what's at the beginning, what's in the middle, and I'll leave out the conclusion. You read a book, a novel, okay, and you read everything, but you leave the last few chapters. So as Muslims, we believe that God's message started with the Torah and previous books, and it continued in the form of the Bible, and it continued and finalized with the Holy Qur'an. So it would be impractical for a human being to simply read the Torah or the Bible and leave the last part out. And I generally say to my Christian and Jewish friends that, you know what, we Muslims, we don't take anyone out. We encompass everyone, so we believe in all the prophets, including Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Whereas when it comes to the Christians, they deny the prophethood or the truthfulness of the Prophet Muhammad, and when it comes to the Jews, they deny Jesus and Muhammad. Whereas Muslims, we're all encompassing. We can't complete our faith if we don't believe in these books, if we don't believe in these prophets and these holy personalities. So it's a continuing message that continued, and it became the final testament. Now, big question of modern times. People say that, You know, the Qur'an speaks about violence. The Qur'an speaks about terrorism. You know, people, Muslims, they're bloodthirsty. You know, every time there's some violence, there's probably a Muslim behind it. That's what goes in the minds of so many people. So, where is this correlation? We have on one side, you know, these wonderful themes that I spoke about in the Holy Qur'an, and a continuation of the message of the Torah and the Bible. And how come there are people that apparently are using the Quranic text to justify violence, the Quranic text to justify terrorism? So I want to touch a little upon this, and we see that even people of other faiths, okay, we all know this individual, I'm sure, by now. Okay, they say some people get popularity through the negative. So obviously this pastor made a claim that you know, we should burn the Holy Qur'an. And why? He simply said because Islam is a violent religion. It's you know, its book teaches wrong, and it shouldn't have any space on this earth. And this is why he made this claim or this demand. So where is this coming from, and why is it happening? So I generally say that whatever is happening that is misleading and it's not part of the message of the Holy Qur'an, it's for personal reasons. So there might be political reasons. So there's people who may be disturbed about their piece of land, okay, and they're at war with another group of people who is trying to usurp their land. Now they need some source. They need some sort of satisfaction that, you know, we have to take our land back. So what do? They look for justification. They look for justification somewhere. So they open the verses of the Holy Qur'an when the Qur'an speaks about the Prophet's life, how he was expelled from his land and he was told to engage in self-defense. Okay, then they take these kind of verses and they say this is very applicable to us. So we can justify our inappropriate actions through the Qur'an. And it's totally false. We see this in other religions too. You know, if you study the abortion clinics that have been bombed and destroyed by Christian extremists, they actually quote verses of the Bible. And this individual that I just showed you, for his claim, he quoted verses of the Bible saying this is Jesus, what he's saying. He's saying that we should burn the Holy Qur'an because it's not truth. So there are millions of people in the world that use and manipulate holy texts to justify their wrong. But does that mean that the verses or the holy text is inappropriate itself? No, it means that there's something wrong with the individual. It's something wrong with the person. And you know, I have many Christian friends who are leaders in the community, and you know, the other day I was also, when this was happening, I was driving by, and someone pointed out to me that, look at that church, and they had a board out there, and it said, we're going to make 9/11/2010 a day to read the Qur'an. So the Christians in the church were reading the Holy Qur'an on the day that he was claiming that we should you know, burn the Qur'an. Okay, so why? Because that is the true message of the Bible, that we don't incite hate. So we can't say, because of this one individual, that you know, the Bible speaks back, or the Bible is violent, or incites hate. Why can we not say this? Because this is his personal misunderstanding. He's trying to justify his wrong actions through the holy text. Okay, so this is what's happening. There are numerous people in the world who are disturbed, maybe through political constraints. Maybe they have a beef with their you know, foreign policy of their countries. Maybe they have some concerns related to what has happened in the past to their families or to the people that were close to them. And what they're doing is they're looking for justification. So they open the verses of whether it be the Bible or the Holy Qur'an, etc., and they try to justify their wrong. So what generally I say is that any verse of the Holy Qur'an that you feel, that anyone, whether a Muslim or non-Muslim, because there are numerous Muslims who don't have the right understanding of the Holy Qur'an,